So you may remember one of the big Brexiteer slogans was that they don't like unelected bureaucrats. But in the UK, ignoring the fact that we have a whole selection of unelected bureaucrats called, the civil service. You don't get to select who heads up the civil service. You just get to elect essentially their bosses, who ultimately, the book's meant to stop with them. They're the over ones who are in charge, and it's the civil servants who are in charge of implementing what the boss's plans are. So it's very important the fact that you have people like Dominic Cummings, who again is a completely unelected bureaucrat, seems to be running around like a bull in the china shop down in Whitehall, completely, quote, tearing up the rule book and the way that the government does things. And this is quite worrying because we've already had the indication of the fact that you've had Gavin Williamson, who is the prime responsible for all the A-level disaster and should be forced to resign if he won't resign himself. Instead, he made the person who was in charge of Ofqual, who's the regulating body that the government are in charge of, resign instead. That wasn't her fault, and it will breed a very, very chilling effect upon the civil service because, innovation will not be encouraged. All these things that are important and having an open and, innovative, getting, a group of people to be really innovative. I'm trying to describe it, but I can't. An electric atmosphere within an organization. If you've ever worked in a really creative organization, or if you've worked in an office that works really well, you'll know that somebody could just say, I've got an idea. And it's innovative and they're willing to try it and they'll be more open to doing it. And the problem is that because of what happened here, especially with the Ofqual, no one's going to do that. There's going to be instead breeding a culture of, well, I'd rather cover my ass than propose this new initiative that I've got. Because if it doesn't work, then, I'm on the chopping block rather than, Gavin Williamson. So that becomes a major problem itself within Whitehall. However, you may know of a blog called The Secret Barrister, and he is a UK barrister who remains a secret and anonymous because officially he's not meant to talk about this stuff. However, it is one, I'd say, of the most important blogs politically wise you should be reading if you want to know more about the UK legal system and how just bad it really is, how awful it is getting. Go and read his blog and you'll see some truly shocking revelations. However, we've also had recently the reveal of the secret civil servant, talking about what's been going on in Whitehall. And that's what we're going to go over today. This is just an extract from the New European, and I think it sums it up quite nicely. So, the title is The Secret Civil Servant. The resistance against Dominic Cummings is only getting started. So, if you're a Whitehall watcher, you probably heard about the hastily deleted tweet that appeared on the Civil Service's official Twitter account late in May, shortly after the extraordinary Prime Ministerial speech defending the actions of a certain D. Cummings of Co-Durham. Within hours, that tweet prompted widespread support for the brave soul who dared dissent with such spectacular fashion. It even got the attention of J.K. Rowling, who promised she'd step into the front of a year's salary if the Cabinet Office inquisitors managed to wrinkle out the offender out of their civil service hidey hole. The funny thing is, the tweet didn't release any secrets, defame anyone, or criticise any particular government policy. If anything, it was a cry for help and solidarity. Arrogant and offensive, you can imagine working with these truth twisters. Many of us, especially of those who've worked on Operation Yellowhammer, who have worked direct with ministers raised our glasses to the hacker. But one tweet does not a revolution make. Or does it, you have to ask? After 4 years of evacuation and spin and barefaced lying, it is now hard to argue with Orwell's dictum that in a time of decency, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Here in Whitehall, we are watching with horror as the government opens up several new fronts against the machinery of government. Three crucial developments in particular have added weight to Number 10's reforming wrecking ball in recent weeks. First, the Brexit transition period deadline, which came about with barely a whimper. This was a symbolic in its confirmation of a trajectory towards, at best, a bare-bones deal with the European Union. At worst, it embodies a desire to pursue the kind of damaging but ideologically pure outcome that the most extreme figures of the Vote Leave squad have always wanted. Second, Cummings. Engorged by the unconditional support lavished on him by the Prime Minister after the Bernard Castle fiasco, has an even stronger mandate to do pretty much whatever the hell he wants, including the sanctioning of a wasteful merger of perhaps Whitehall's best performing department with perhaps its worst. The third is Michael Gove. Now has conferred ministerial respectability and a framework as absurd and inscrutable as a gossamer, but a framework nevertheless for the government's plan to remake the civil service in its own image, aided by the deforestation of the nation's top civil servant, Sir Mark Sidwell. More on that in a bit. These developments have horrified many civil servants, but let me make one thing plain. This isn't bureaucratic resistance or even the natural apprehension that any self-respecting mammal feels about the prospect of change. The civil service I joined in the Tony Blair years has already been changed almost out of all recognition in the intervening decades, mostly for the better. It's not perfect, but it has come a long way. It's far younger, smarter, more efficient and more diverse than it's ever been. Change is never easy, but we're sort of used to it. Our fear is more existential, that in aggressively politicising the civil service, this government is doing permanent damage to public services and accelerating the cohesion of trust in many of our genuinely world-class institutions. I've written at length elsewhere about the civil service morale, but it gives me no pleasure to report here that I've never seen it lower. The speed and scale of the changes being made over the past few weeks alone are quickly exhausting the meaningfulness of the world unprecedented. There's the rising tide of hostile and anonymous briefings against Sir Mark Sidwell and the other civil service leaders, which, according to union boss Dave Penman, have now become a feature of how this government rolls. There's the ennoblement and the elevation of chief Brexit negotiator and special advisor David Frost to the national security advisor role. That has only ever been done by civil servants. There's a curious case of the escapology of Robert Jerrick, and finally the hostile takeover of the DFID and the FCO, which for my DFDD mates is the political equivalent of finding out that Marcus Rashford will be playing in his football in a Victorian basement next season after a free transfer to the country estate of Jacob Rees-Mogg. And let us not even get into our world-beating response to COVID-19, which will provide ample public justification for the worst of the civil service reforms hurtling towards us. All of these points are revamping a politicalisation of the civil service, and what Jonathan Powell recently called a roaring coup against our cherished institutions. No wonder more civil servants feel compelled to speak up, but don't be fooled. Writing snarky columns like this one isn't what gets me or any other pissed off civil servant up in the morning. What motivates us, like any other worker, being left alone to do our jobs, whether that's planning roads, schools, hospitals, or even trade policy. We're not robots. Being a civil servant means getting the facts and providing the best service we can to the public. Most of all, especially when presenting realistic options for ministers to take decisions on. This means being free to tell the truth. That means that the UK civil service can only ever be as good as the ministers who oversee it. There is no shortage of ideas to improve the civil service, but no system or organisation, no matter how efficient or sophisticated, can be made foolproof against willful stupidity or malice. Having a plan for tackling poor civil service performance is a great idea, but only as long as there is a plan for dealing with poor ministers. Which brings me back to Michael Gove's speech. Some might point to his recent Ditchley Park lecture as evidence of this government's commitment to data innovation and fairness and renewal. Sure, he's right bemoaning systematic problems in the civil service and called for more risk-taking and radical experimentation as political censures to the lethal institution of groupthink. The problem is, civil servants don't believe a word of it, any more than we believe the members of the European Research Group are researchers. We see alongside the centralisation of power Cummings has already initiated, the government's speech was little more than a diplomatic communique laying the groundwork for further weaponisation of evidence, research and facts in the service of predetermined politically convenient outcomes. Boris Johnson already has a sophisticated sycophantic cabinet. Will a sycophantic civil service staffed full of political appointees prepare us for dealing with a triple impact of COVID-19, life outside the EU and climate change? We can only look across the Atlantic for answers. It's telling that even now, amidst all the thousands of parliamentary debates about Brexit, no serving minister has ever dared to be honest with the UK public about the full extent of the economic, social and cultural damage that Brexit will continue to wreak. That dishonesty, whether willfully or inadvertent, constitutes the very foundation of lethal groupthink that's promising to contaminate UK political biosphere for a generation. Any civil servant's initiative that attempts to build on that foundation will almost certainly founder. Never forget, it's ministers, not civil servants, who have, despite significant changes in public opinion about Brexit, ensured that British citizens are about to have fewer rights. To the consternation of almost all our international peers, Trump and Putin notably expected, it's ministers, not civil servants, who have ensured that our friends and allies see the UK as politically dysphoric nation, that even now has started celebrating the removal of a perfectly healthy limbs, even when simultaneously struggling with the flu. The sick man of Europe is not just a metaphor, if it ever was. And now, recovery may well need the rewiring of government. Cummings and Gove are onto something there. But they can only be done in constant and collaboration with civil servants, based on mutual commitment to stop socially distancing from the truth. That hard rain Cummings has promised for the civil service, it can only wash away the goodwill that is the vital glue that in some cases is the only thing from keeping vital institutions going. The view from the shop floor is that the government must stop characterising civil servants as insurgents and start seeing us as partners. Until it does, there will be an increase in numbers of us who will tweet and type our resistance. I hope J.K. Rowling has a checkbook ready. And I definitely go and follow this guy. He has written a very lot of number of blogs about what is going on in Whitehall, and we might cover them maybe in the future, but I definitely recommend go and check him out. So it's The Secret Civil Servant. Also, go and subscribe to the blog as well as him, The Secret Barrister as well, because I tell you now, if you want to become really politically active and engaged, these are two blogs that you must read at least once a week, because at the moment they are invaluable. they are an invaluable source of information. And these are people who work directly in the legal institutions and can tell you what exactly is going on inside, as well as the civil service, and just tell you what is going on. Because right now, it's absolutely insane. So please do like and share this video around. It helps the channel out loads. If you are new, please do subscribe to the channel. We talk about British politics and, of course, Brexit quite a lot, because if you're talking about British politics, you can't exactly not talk about Brexit. And, of course, if you'd like to support the channel another way, there are links down below to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link should you like to support the channel in that way, and every little bit helps. So, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.